And we're back. Okay, hopefully we're live. What's up, everyone? Talking first day of training camp practices in the books. We got a little information to go over. Um, some good, some not so good. I mean, we can start with some of the moves. Dolphins already have multiple people going on the physically unable to perform list. Probably the biggest thing is, at least from my understanding, the whole Taj Washington thing. He's on the reserve/injured list, and he's his season's basically over. Which obviously sucks for him, but if he wasn't gonna make the roster, he's basically becomes a stash player for next year now. So if he wasn't gonna be able to make it, he would have ended up somewhere else. So I guess that's the only positive that comes out of it is you're able to still stash him, keep him for next year because you have a lot of bodies in the wide receiver room, and then hopefully he can be ready there because I still like his potential there. And then obviously they brought in Ogba. They brought in someone named Kyrick McGowan. Don't really have any information on him. Receiver. Odell and David Long Jr. were put on the active/physically unable to perform list, which is unfortunate. And let's see. And then they took, I think, Ahmed and Mark Perry off after they were placed on it a couple days ago. So they should be good to go. Let's see. Apparently it was a defensive dominated day. We got to hear from McDaniel did some stuff. There's some clips of Achane talking about his different role, looking as more of getting more involved as a receiver. The defense apparently had 4 interceptions. Let me see who that was again. Yeah, so Zeke Vandenberg got a pick. Nick Needham, Jordan Poyer, Siren Neal apparently was impressive, which is interesting. Things that I want to talk about there. We'll wait until some people get in here real quick. Let me know how you guys are feeling about the season coming up. I'm excited, man. I'm so excited. I'm sorry, I'm gonna move. Getting flashbang by this light, but if I don't have the light on, it's not gonna the quality goes down so much. It's actually insane. Yeah. Oop. Screen. But definitely some interesting stuff. Excited to see hear more about players. Apparently Holland kind of he collided with Malik Washington on a play and he had to go off the field. It doesn't sound super serious, so hopefully he's all good to go. That's another thing, very important. Just health is the most important thing for this team at this point. Tua, talking about Tua, he was there. He's just not participating really in 11-on-11 snaps. I heard he looked pretty sharp in the 7-on-7 stuff. He did throw a pick apparently. We can actually look at the play. It kind of shows it. They posted a couple clips, Miami Dolphins Twitter, but this is not this one right here. It was a good play by Siren Neal who knocks it out. Barrios doesn't create any separation, and then Zeke Vandenberg. It was a picked pass that was tipped. Those types of play, but good stuff for Siren Neal. Excited that he's getting more involved because he's a guy that I expect to make the roster as a special teams ace. But if he can make an impact as a nickel defender, give you some dime snaps, stuff like that, some good things on defense because he's obviously very, very athletic and has some nice length to him. And, potentially could fight for some playing time. After Ramsey and Fuller, no one's really guaranteed anything. So it should be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. There was another clip, Tua to Tyreek. Nothing too crazy, just some, more a deep out route. Looks like Tyreek was beating Cam Smith on the play, which is, pretty standard. Nice, to see Tua throwing outside the numbers and stuff like that. But you never can tell from these angles. I feel like people usually overreact, but with how close up it is, you can't really tell where all the other defenders are. Ball placement, where exactly you should put it. That's why I don't put too much stock into those videos, but it's always fun to see football back on the timeline. Yeah, and then we'll take a look at. I like to go through what Travis Wingfield says because I think Wingfield does a pretty good job of breaking down. He's pretty smart, understands what he's looking at. He said defense had themselves a day with 4 picks. Vandenberg, Needham, Poyer, and Neal. Defense did a great job pressuring. They kept getting after the QB. That was kind of the big thing. It looked like the O-line kind of struggled, which usually I feel like that's the case pretty much every year. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that. It seems like the defense usually comes out pretty hot at the start of training camps, and usually ends up winning the training camp. But we see that like doesn't always translate into success on the field because last year the defense, I'm pretty sure, was dominating, and then by the start of the season, when the season actually started, the offense was better on the field. Said Tua was surgical in 7-on-7, had some darts to the perimeter, right on time / on target. It's pretty standard stuff. He's usually pretty good in those 7-on-7 scenarios. He said Quentin Bell was all over the field, early standout. Now that one's interesting to me because he's a guy in that edge room that, you know, like with the injuries, with Shaq Barrett retiring, some people have a chance to really stand out in that edge room to get some like, potentially early snaps. And Quentin Bell's like a super athlete, was a practice squad guy last year. So I'm excited to see if he potentially develops because he has the athletic ability to get there. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Emmanuel Ogbah and Deshaun Hand had a sack. Two guys who've been around. Deshaun Hand's a guy that's fighting for a roster spot, so we'll see if he's going to see playing time this season or he, you know, ends up not making the roster. That could go in different ways. He said Kendall Fuller, Jalen Ramsey looks as advertised. That's nice to see. Baiting QB throws, playing multiple roles. That's like the biggest thing. Playing multiple roles. Thank God. Let these guys play over the field. Utilize their versatility. They're both guys that can play inside and outside. Ramsey is a guy that can play every defensive back spot. He can give you some, you know, snaps within the box and play as like a linebacker if you really needed to him. Utilize that to his biggest advantages. So I'm excited to see more of these guys get mentioned. Nothing really on the rookies that I've seen so far and how the rookies looked, which, you know, is pretty standard, but I want to see and hear more about the rookies throughout camps, maybe see some clips there. But that's nice to hear. I love the versatility, playing multiple different roles. That's huge, man. And they said Devon Achane had one of the slippery home run runs. Looks in midseason form. Not too worried about Achane. I'm expecting big things from him again. Basically what he did his rookie season. And then he said Javon Holland got nicked up early. I'm sure we'll get an update sooner than later. So hopefully Holland's good to go. That's big time. That is big time. I also read that like I think Mike White threw 2 of those picks. I know we showed the Tua threw one of them. That was off like a tipped pass. Cyril Neal looking pretty good, which is interesting. It's a room that's going to be interesting. The wide receiver battle becomes less interesting since Taj is kind of out for season. That means that like 7 people are fighting for those 6 spots. And who's not going to get it? I don't know. My money would be on Barrios, but I think it's a little too early to say this early into camp. But it should be interesting. Yeah. Also, some other good stuff to check out. We'll see how. I think the Quentin Bell stuff is really interesting. He said he was all over the field. I feel like that was even stuff that was being said during OTAs. And I feel like I haven't seen much film on Quentin Bell, like rarely any. So that's like a name I just don't have a ton of information on. That's why I'm like really interested to see how that ends up working. But yeah. You guys got any questions, any things that people are talking about? I know people have the concerns with the Tua contract. I still think, my personal opinion, it gets done. Apparently Ezekiel Vandenberg had that pick. I also heard some other people talking about him doing some good stuff. He was the guy that didn't get to really do anything last year. He was in a similar situation. But I think what Taj was in now, he basically became a camp stash because he got hurt, and then he was just stashed on the IR all season long before the season even started. And there's some other clips of just Tua quick releases. I've seen these videos, him jogging around. That should be pretty fun. I just am ready for practice or preseason to start because I really want to watch some film on these guys. I want to see them in some live action. I want to see the regular season, obviously. Training camp is just like the first taste. Definitely a little worried when it comes to the offensive line. I know they lost Barrett. They signed Ogbah. We still need to see the contract details because it's up to $5 million. So I'm wondering with like how much cap space they have exactly once the Ogbah deal factors in and then Barrett leaves. Plus, I'm pretty sure Barrett was because I think a lot of the money was used in like the void year stuff. So I think that saves more money on the cap in the next upcoming years than it does this year. But yeah, probably would have been nice just to. I know they probably just didn't want to pay Van Ginkel that contract, but it might have been nice to just keep him around. Sad to see Andrew go, you know. And then anything else that I see them mentioning here? Yeah, you guys got any questions? Anything people want to talk about specifically that comes to the team? Any players? Anything you think they should do, add to the squad? Down to answer some stuff or just have a discussion about it. And hopefully they can stay healthy, man. I'm just reading about Holland getting hurt because I wasn't that sure. The first tweet I read was kind of confusing. I didn't know if it was Holland or Malik that got hurt because him and Malik Washington were the ones that collided, but I'm pretty sure Holland, was the one that was down. Other teams having people like hold out. It's Odell's injury doesn't seem too serious either. I know he's not practicing, but they're thinking he'll be back sooner rather than later, which is fine. It could always be worse. At least there hasn't been anything like super major yet. Dolphins don't have really anybody holding out either, which is cool. Like Tua's practicing. A lot of other teams are having their holdout issues. But yeah, kind of want to show some of these clips over and over again. This is really the only thing I think the Miami Dolphins account posted was this and the Siren Neal deflection. But always nice to see Tua to Tyreek, one of the best QB to receiver combos in the league. They just clearly have a nice chemistry together, and hoping to see a little more variety, obviously, this year, but still Tyreek's going to put up absolutely insane numbers. Neal. Boom. Knock it out. I just wonder how much of this is going to actually, translate into the playing time, because sometimes you hear about a player looking great in camp and then it doesn't end up translating like super well into the games. And then sometimes like those players end up like really breaking out. And sometimes like preseason can actually be a really good tell for a lot of these guys for how they're going to look in the future. Yeah, I got pretty high hopes for the offense all around. I feel like they've improved a lot of their weaknesses. It's not like they added like a lot of top tier talent to that side of the ball, but because they already had like their top tier guys, but they added a lot of guys who can complement what they needed. And that, like, the Jonnu Smiths, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, Odell to win on like third down versus man to man while Waddle and Tyreek get double teamed. Excited to see how that comes into play. And then getting guys like Jonnu that yak, and then getting them running backs maybe more involved in the receiving game, which will be interesting. And then defense, I think Calais Campbell had a pretty good quote about, I forget what the exact quote was, but I know he talked about how it was, how he would describe the defensive scheme. And he talked about it being like a lot of simulated pressures in different look blitzes, which is so like him basically talking about them using versatility and using simulated pressures to get out to the quarterback, which is nice. And he just seems like a good leader, good vibes. He's had a quote where he said like, today is the worst we are going to be all year, which is fair. It's your first practice, like real practice training camp. You just got to keep improving every day. So that's why, you take a lot of these early practices with a grain of salt and you see how the negatives that come out of it and see how they can improve upon it. Who's going to play center? Well, Aaron Brewer is going to start for them. I know Connor Williams is probably going elsewhere. I know he passed his physical. That should be interesting. But Brewer will be the center when he's healthy. So, if he's not healthy, the backup's probably Liam Eichenberg. But yeah. Also, yeah, they're doing like the NFL's top 100 list, and the Dolphins, they just went like through 70 to 61, and the Dolphins had 4 players in that range. They had Armstead at 67, Jordan Poyer at 65, Jalen Waddle at 63, and Bradley Chubb at 62. Which is interesting. I didn't think Poyer would be. I mean, this list is kind of like the Pro Bowl. It's kind of like a popularity contest with names and how long you've been around. I don't think it's an accurate reflection of the players in the league, but it is always cool to see, you getting some accolades. Armstead is definitely a top 100 player, but I think health-wise could bump him down a little bit. I don't think Poyer is as good as his rank right here. Waddle and Chubb are pretty solid. I think they're probably, top 60th players in the league. So it's nice to see them getting some recognition. But yeah, I think the biggest concern it seems like so far is just the O line, which I feel like everyone kind of thought that's what it was going to be. But we'll see how that if they can end up improving and kind of who ends up sticking out, who really wins. Because well, who will be the left guard, who will be the right guard, specifically, who just ends up. And sometimes it's not even like the best player; it ends up just being the guys who have the best teamwork and chemistry together. Just your best group of five that really meld well. Which would be interesting. Oh god. Let me see. Yeah. I didn't hear anything about anyone else. Did anyone else see any quotes? Anything? Any other players that I didn't really mention that got? Because I know Jordan Poyer had a pick. Nick Needham had a pick. I didn't really hear. I know Poyer and I think Tyron Neal, who had a pick, and he also had that pass deflection that led to another pick for Vandenberg. I know Poyer and Neal were the ones that picked off Mike White, and on like back-to-back plays apparently. Not sure about the Needham one. I'm guessing since they didn't mention, I'm guessing Nick Needham probably picked off Skyler. If that's because I just didn't see it mentioned, but I know it wasn't Tua or it wasn't mentioned with the Mike White either. So I'm interested to see with the new practice squad rules if the Dolphins only keep two quarterbacks, which I think they should do. Keep two quarterbacks. That should help them keep an extra spot on the roster at a different position, because this is probably the deepest they've been in a lot of spots, and I feel like you want to keep some of these players. Potentially wouldn't be stuck around. I even saw quotes of like Johnny Smith and Jody Fortson both talked about Tanner Connor, and they think Tanner Connor is going to be a name to know of, and I'm not so sure of how that's going to happen, but I do like some of the stuff I've seen from Tanner Connor. It'll be interesting to see if he ever catches on, especially because he kind of did some interesting stuff at fullback last year, and he's a wide receiver convert. I do expect him to stick around as like a practice squad player. So it should be interesting. Always, those like fringe roster guys are definitely some of them. I feel like that's kind of what I look at the most. A lot of those like fringe roster guys that could either be like practice squad players, really fight for the end of the roster, or they end up like really improving and becoming someone that you need to, potentially will make like a big impact that you're not kind of, seeing. That usually happens every year. There's usually at least one. We'll see who that ends up being this year. Yeah, that's kind of just a quick little talk about it. Unless anyone has any questions to go through, anything they missed or didn't hear about. Because I went through Twitter to try to find as much info on it as I could. But yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.